Thank you everyone for joining us for this session on mental fitness for high performance. I'm very excited today to be joined by Sindra Kamphoff and Carrie Cheadle. They're two of my mentors who helped me before I moved over to the US, so it's very exciting and humbling to have them on this show. So we're going to be talking about mental fitness, and when I say mental fitness, it comes under mental skills that you use, the mindfulness practice of giving yourself space between your thoughts, and emotional well-being, how you regulate your emotions and energy. So before I dive in, I'll just give a brief introduction. So I met Carrie and Sindra last year, where I went on a mastermind program, which kind of just helped me to manage my energy and choose where I should be doing my focus, and helping me really understand what my why was for doing the business. And it's really helped me definitely through this pandemic.
Little did we know.
We couldn't foresee this was going to come, but it's definitely helped me with pivoting. I can definitely attest to that. So it's a joy to have you guys on. I'll just let you do a brief introduction. Sindra, did you want to go first?
Sure. So, Sunny, thanks so much for having Carrie and I. It's always fun to be on things with Carrie because I love working with her, and I love the mastermind that we put together for performance psychology folks. I live in Minnesota. I start with that because I'm like Minnesota nice.
I can attest to that.
And have been in the career and profession for almost 20 years. Wrote a book called Beyond Grit, which was an Amazon bestseller and a workbook a couple of years ago. And would describe myself as an executive coach, a performance coach, and a keynote speaker. So I've spent the last 4 years working with the Minnesota Vikings, providing mental training to them, and also do quite a bit of executive coaching. So that's one of the things I've kind of doubled down on in this time period because people need our work more than ever before.
Mm-hmm. Boy, is that true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was super excited when you asked us both to be on too. I was like, wait, we get to do it together? Yeah, I'm on board. So similar to Sindra, my name is Carrie Jackson Cheadle, and similar to Sindra, I've been in the field for almost 20 years now, and author, professor, in private practice, exclusively doing performance enhancement with athletes and exercisers, as well as life skills, which it's definitely been interesting shifting more into some of those life skills and resilience building during this time. So I have a couple different areas of specialty. I specialize in working with athletes with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I also specialize in working with endurance athletes and athletes recovering from injury. So I'm a two-time author. My first book was On Top of Your Game, and my second book, which came out almost exactly a year ago, is called Rebound, and that one's specifically for injured athletes and the regaining confidence coming back into your sport through the injury recovery process. So it's really fun for me to get to have all these different areas that I get to specialize in and work with all different, all different levels of athletes, all different from recreational to professional and elite, competing at national and international levels in all different sports. So for me, it's super fun to get to help people remove some of the obstacles that get in their way, which is usually us. That is the obstacle, myself included, with my own life. So and get to help people thrive in that way. And it's been so it's such a privilege to get to work in this field.
Okay, thank you for the introductions. That's great. So we've got at least 20 years of experience on here. We cover athletes and executive coaching. So basically, I think we cover everybody when it comes to performance. I will post the links for the books when we share this, just so people can get their hands on that resources. So I'm going to dive into the first question I wanted to talk about. Is we obviously don't need to talk about the elephant in the room that happened with the pandemic. The first year where the Olympics got called off, so it's definitely an unprecedented year. And I wanted to split between the first wave when we thought this was going to finish in 3 months, and now where we are where we don't know when it's going to finish, and it's kind of changed our mindset. So I wanted to talk over the second wave. What have been the joys and challenges that you've each faced, and how is that showing up with the work that you're doing with the clients I kind of call it performance versus well-being. Is it more well-being now, or still the performance work? So I was wondering who wanted to go first. Sindra, did you want to?
Sure, I'll go first. So I would say, some of the challenges I've experienced, I think all of us have felt like our business shift. And my business shifted in terms of last year at this time, I was traveling all around, mostly United States, but to give you a sense, I put on 35,000 miles on my car last year.
Oh, wow. So
just like every day, speaking somewhere, going somewhere, to now, like every day, being home. And I've spoken face-to-face like 3 times. So that's actually, there's a lot of great things that are coming from that. I'm home with my kids every night. And I've learned to do like virtual keynoting, which is really awesome, right? And I actually realized, wow, I really like this and had no idea that I would have liked this before. So there's a lot of great things that are happening as my business is shifting. I think also more people are coming to me for one-on-one work, which kind of shows you the importance of the well-being and that people really need our help at this time period. Yeah. A challenge I experienced during this time is my son tested positive for COVID in July.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, yeah. And the whole time, we obviously, he didn't spread it to anyone else, which was incredible, but we did social distance in our own home. And so it was a really difficult time where my son is 13. He shouldn't be in his room all by himself for 2 weeks. But, we ate together, but 6 feet apart and outside, so it was a really difficult time because I felt more fear than I've felt in a long time. And it gave me a sense, I was like, why am I going through this? What lesson can I learn? What's the opportunity here? And, I think it really helped me just recognize what people are going through. And, he doesn't have any long-term effects at this point, but it made me really understand the fear people are living in. And, so that helped me give me a lot of perspective.
Okay. I'm so glad to hear that he's better now. A friend of mine caught it early on. I think he caught it in March or April. And I remember he had a panic attack where he was struggling to breathe and he thought it was the virus taking over.
Right.
But the worst thing was his mum and sisters were outside crying and they couldn't come into the room. And I remember when he told me that, it really shocked me where you realize if your loved one catches it, you can't actually even go to help them. So
yeah, it's really difficult. And I've been thinking a lot about, just what is the opportunity here for us to learn and grow. And I had someone named Morris Morrison on my podcast last week, and he talked about Coach COVID. And I thought that was such a great analogy. And what he was really saying is like, what is Coach COVID teaching you right now? Yeah. And for me, it's taught me to take a step back, prioritize always what's most important, but also like using my experiences to have empathy with what people are experiencing right now.
Yeah, I love that, Coach COVID. I think we're learning a lot of lessons that, for me, I mean, a big one has been when you hear the word control the controllables, and everyone says that all the time, but this has really taught you where there's a lot that's not in your control and learning to let go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I had just, written Rebound, and everything in the book is all about resilience for helping athletes come through the recovery process. And as I was getting interviewed for that, COVID hit. And right when that happened, I had just happened to have a couple different interviews with people about the book and sort of the talking about the different resources in there to help athletes coming back. And those same people came back and they were like, okay, so I just pitched another article because everything in your book applies 100% to what everyone's going through right now with having such an unexpected change to not just athlete seasons, but our entire life structure. And so I think for me, some of the joys and challenges, I mean, one of the things that's been really interesting that's been driven home in a pretty significant way for me is just the two things. One is that life isn't going to stop just because there's a pandemic, right? So there's going to be really big life challenges that happen during this time that have nothing to do with COVID. And there's going to be really incredible, joyful things that happen too. And that it's okay to still go through those life experiences, even though there's this other huge, there's this other context that's happening. So that doesn't, life doesn't stop. And I think the other thing too is really thinking about it in terms of, life is going to continue to throw you challenges through all of us. And this just happens to be the one that's in front of us right now. So how do we take sort of all of the skills that the three of us work on with that, in our work with athletes and with executives, about how to get through a challenging situation? How do we take those skills and apply it to what we're going through now? So it's been, it's funny because I know a lot of people talk about how challenging this year is. It's definitely been challenging for me, but I've also had some incredibly wonderful things happening as well. So it's interesting that it makes both of those things feel more powerful, both in that because we're all at our baseline of stress is higher than normal because of what we're going through. Little things might feel bigger than they normally would. Like I almost lost it this morning when my partner ate my oatmeal instead of his, the one I made for him, and I almost lost my shit. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is clearly not about the oatmeal. So just recognizing that gets higher, but also the other piece gets higher too, where it's like how, some of the things that I'm feeling so grateful for and some of the wonderful things that are happening, just like I have such joy and gratitude and feeling that even more too. So it's been a really challenging, but also a really amazing time kind of going through this life experience and then helping other people maybe see it through that lens as well.
I love that answer, in that the joys and the challenges are completely mixed in. And that's what I found through this experience. I don't know, maybe because the experience is heightened gratitude, because everyone says be grateful. But say, for instance, for me, we had a son during this period, and he's going to be 1 this year. And the first period, we didn't really know what was happening with COVID because we were too busy trying to keep him alive. And he has brought so much joy that I can't explain the joy that I've had this year. But it's also been a tough challenge. For instance, taking the decision whether to send him to daycare or not. That was, I can't tell you the amount of brain scenarios, planning, and then we decided, okay, we can't carry on anymore. We need to send him to the daycare, and we went through and then he gets sick. He gets sick for the first time, which is going to happen when you get to the daycare.
Right.
But
yeah.
Whatever you
but
do.
During COVID, you're like, oh God, what does this mean?
Did you sneeze? Every time I look at him, I think the challenges have been great, but the smile he puts on your face, you can't begin to put it into words. How much happiness he brings you. So I love that point you made about joys, and also I found that we really had to be our work during this period, because before, when I used to do this and coach athletes, and you coach them almost like this theoretical thing, but every day now you're having to use all those skills just to show up to be able to do your work. And also having to learn, because I feel there's so much uncertainty. No one's ever been through this. So you're having to learn every time as you're going through and learn from different places. So that's definitely been an eye-opener for this. So the other point I wanted to touch on then is with the work that we've been doing, how has the human side helped in us being more vulnerable, and also home and work life is now mixed together, and also the uncertainty where we're having to learn? How has the human side changed and also helped with the work that you're doing with athletes? Kerry, I don't know if you wanted to go take that one.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. When there's definitely for me been a shift in the direction with optimal performance. So what's interesting about it is my athletes are in all different places. So some of them are able to compete in the sport that they're in. Some of them are still it's very unknown, and we have no idea when they'll be able to compete. So everyone's going through something a little bit different. However, they're all still going through this shared experience of things are not the way that I thought they were going to be. That's the piece that is sort of unifying everybody, I think, right now. And what's interesting about working with my clients right now is that part of optimal performance has to do with this greater context and well-being in general. So it's definitely something that I'm talking about a lot more with my clients now than I ever have, and has been a shift. And some of my the clients that I was working with that were working on, we were working on their sports and working on their athletic performance, and they were sort of at the end of our time together decided I'd really love to continue working together and figure out how can I apply some of these things to life right now, and being able to be resilient. So it's definitely, for me, I've definitely seen a really interesting, that's become part of the conversation. And what's interesting for me is that I think that's going to continue to be part of the conversation from now on, even once we're past, even when this is all a memory, which let's hope is sooner rather than later. Oh my God. But, so that's been really interesting, and was one of the things that sparked me to finally pull the trigger and start a membership on the idea of, it's called Rebound Lifestyle, which comes from a chapter in the book where it's like, how do we do that now? How do we apply these skills of resilience to everything in life? Because it's not I think we get stuck in this happiness myth that sometimes that at some point in the future, when all of my ducks are in a row and all the stars have aligned and all these things are in place, then everything's going to be great. And it just doesn't work like that. So then, instead of buying into that myth, how do we give people the resilience tools to be able to meet the challenges that are inevitably going to be coming?
Yeah. Okay. I love that answer. Sindra, do you want to?
Yeah, well, a couple of things I'm thinking about. First, I'm thinking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that you can't reach self-actualization without having your physiological needs met and your safety needs and love and belonging and esteem, right? Confidence. And so I think it's so important that we're all caring for ourselves right now. One of the things that I did this morning is I did a virtual keynote with 230 healthcare leaders. And it was supposed to be, face-to-face. We moved it to virtual, and it was supposed to be, several months ago. And it was like, there's no better time right now to be considering, how do you train your mind? How do you care for yourself first, though, before you even train your mind, right? And how do you lead yourself first during this time? And I think we have to lead ourselves first before we can lead others. And that means taking care of our basic needs. I always feel better when I go for a run every morning, Sunny. So it's like, how is that? Can be that a non-negotiable for me? Like that is something that I must do, and if I don't do it, I can't operate at my highest level, right? And so, as I think about helping our clients, a lot of times we are thinking about the past and what it used to be like. I wish that it used to be where we could work with teams face to face, or I wish it was, used to be where, I could do this virtual, this in-person training with 230 leaders. But instead of thinking about that, why don't we just embrace the new better, right? Because I don't think life's going to be the way it used to be. Like things are going to change, right? And so I think when we embrace the new better, it helps us have hope and optimism, and it helps us embrace, what could come and and what's the opportunity, right? And I think that's so important. The way I kind of think about it is like my focus determines how I feel. So I've had to really pay attention close to that. What am I focusing on right now? And I think of focus like a spotlight, like it's always on the top of your head, right? But is it focusing on what it used to be? Or is it focusing on, okay, how can I embrace right now, pivot and adjust, right? Because that's what we're meant to do as humans. We have been pivoting and adjusting. We're just having to pivot and adjust maybe a little bit more than we're used to.
I love that embrace the new better, because I think the people who are doing better now, the ones who've made that mental shift to just accept what's going on. And if you kind of keep going in your head, oh, this is not, what I used to do, or I'm missing this. If you just kind of say, what do I need right now, and what am I actually getting to do? It really helps with seeing actually the joy and the creativity and opportunities that are still here right now.
Yeah, yesterday, Sunny, I was talking to an entrepreneur, and she said the same thing. Like she said, the first 3 weeks she was just kind of in denial and just thinking it was the first 3 months, actually, she was in denial. And it's just like, you don't get back to the way it used to be. But she didn't change and pivot her business enough quickly, right? And I think we're going to continue to have to do this because we don't really know how long it's going to last. That's out of our control, but we can control our response to it. And are we embracing the opportunities here? I think as leaders, we have to continue to remain creative and looking for the opportunity so that we can lead our people through a really, uncertain time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the stretchy mindset, where you have to keep being creative. And I think when this first happened, you saw for 3 months where people were living in shock. And then we started to come out and think, okay, I'm going to try this. And then, but the creativity was hard because we're not used to it. We're used to planning and structure. Mm-hmm. And then now we're realizing you have to keep being creative and keep stretching that stretchy mindset. I look at my son every time, so I have to go for a walk every morning with him, just getting that fresh air and just watching him. Just every time when he looks at a plant or a tree, he will find something new that he didn't see before, and then he's like really amazed. So that kind of reminds me.
That's what we need to embrace, right? Yeah. And you see like the insane joy where they're like, do you see this rock? Like, this is the most amazing. Like, we need to have some of that perspective, I think, of like that kind of joy. It's interesting seeing people, how they I love that you brought that up, Sunny. Like, it's been very interesting to see how people dealt with it that first 3 months, and kind of like what you were talking about with your client, Sindra, and then what happened at that point where we realized, oh, this endurance event that we're in is much longer than we anticipated. Because you sort of you kind of psychologically decide, okay, so I need to put out this amount of effort. So with the actual physical endurance, there's this whole process that's happening of like, you're trying to, decide how much effort do I need to put out. And when you think that the finish line is a certain place, that's how much effort you put out. So we were all ready for that. Like, okay, 3 months, whatever, I can handle this. Right. Then when it extended, there was this real reality check of like, oh, I gotta come to a different level of acceptance with this now, because the game just changed, because the finish line just got pushed off and I don't know where it's going to end. Is it a really different type of thing to deal with? I think it's really important too for people to remember or understand that we're hardwired for resilience. Like, we are 100% hardwired for survival, which means we are, when you think about these huge life events that have happened historically over years and years and years, you don't ever see a point where somebody just sat down and gave up. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, we get through it, and it is because we're wired for that. So I think sometimes reminding ourselves of that too is like, I'm wired to handle this. I can do this. I just gotta regroup and get support and focus on what's in my control. And I do this it's called Feel and Focus template, where I just gave it as homework to one of my clients today, where it's a little sort of template that you can say to yourself to help you exactly what Sindra was talking about with understanding the connection of your emotions and where you're choosing to focus. And so if you recognize you're overwhelmed or you're upset, or you just say, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I am focused on things that I'm focused on too far in the future and on things that I don't have answers to. I want to feel calm, so I'm going to focus on what I need to do in the next hour. Whatever you just plug it into this template, and it's just a nice sort of tool to be like, hit the pause button and go, okay, so exactly what Sindra said. Like, I might not have control over what's happening, but I do have control over my response. And this is a nice, like, quick mental training tool to help get you there.
That's great. Carrie, that's in your book, Rebound, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so many good resources in that book. So
Definitely need to read that book.